fishermen filmed something enormous with the head of a giant turtle. Researchers discovered dozens of creatures nobody knew existed, and a deep-sea camera catches a mysterious floating blob by an oil rig. These are strange encounters with creatures in the deep ocean caught on camera. The footage you're looking at here comes from a man named Garry Liimata. He was a fisherman who'd spent enough time in the water to know what belonged there and what didn't. On this particular morning in May of 1969, he and his crewmate Earl Stozinger were headed out about a half mile from the shore of Vancouver Island's northwest coast. It was calm seas, clear visibility, a pretty routine day. But that changed when they saw something off the port side of the boat neither of them could place. It was at the surface, rolling, circling, occasionally lifting what looked like large flippers out of the water. Liimata and Stozinger watched it for several minutes trying to figure out what they were looking at. Whatever it was big, about 38 feet long, 6 feet across, blotchy white and gray. It had two fins toward the rear, a pair of side flippers, and a neck stretching 8 feet out from the front of its body. At the end of that neck was a head with eyes, nostrils, a mouth, and a beak. It looked like a sea turtle just scaled up. Only thing missing was a shell. At some point, Liimata remembered he had an 8mm camera on board, so he started filming. The animal was still at the surface, sitting roughly 50 feet off the boat, close enough that the footage, which later aired on the TV show Sightings, captured a flipper breaking the water's surface. Liimata held on to the footage for over 2 decades before dropping it off in 1991 at the office of Dr. Paul LeBlanc, a researcher who studied reported sea creature encounters in British Columbia. LeBlanc noticed the creature in the footage but couldn't pin it down. The image was just too underexposed. The tape had also been damaged over the years after Liimata's kids got their hands on it at some point, and yeah, the footage is really hard to make out. Doesn't help that it was recorded in 1969. But again, Liimata wasn't a stranger to the ocean. He knew what seals and whales looked like. Whatever he filmed that morning, he was adamant that it was neither of those. News of this just came out earlier this month. A research expedition off the coast of Brazil turned up 31 species that nobody had ever documented before. And this was a really interesting expedition because the team was working in what's called the midwater. So not the surface and not right at the bottom either. They were in the massive stretch of water in between. It's technically the largest habitat on Earth, but almost nobody studies it. I mean, when I said researchers found 31 new sea creatures, you're probably assuming they were exploring the bottom. But what did they find down there? Ghostly worms, jellies that move using these glittering hair-like limbs, single-celled organisms that were big enough to see with the naked eye? Or were these tadpole-shaped creatures that build themselves little homes out of their own mucus? There was a see-through squid, and much more. Expedition leader Dr. Karen Osborne of the Smithsonian said the midwater is filled with creatures researchers are only just starting to understand. A lot of this was only possible because of how the team approached it. Most of these animals are so fragile that touching them would destroy them, so instead of collecting specimens the traditional way, they used equipment that could scan and photograph the animals in place without disturbing them. So lasers, microscopes small enough to send down on a dive. One piece of equipment was being used underwater for the very first time. Back in 2009, a group of fishermen in Alaska captured video of something strange moving across the water. Nobody on the boat could figure out what they were looking at, and once the footage started making the rounds, people immediately connected it to a creature that's been reported in the Pacific Northwest for more than 100 years. The name that kept coming up was Cadborosaurus, or Caddy for short. It's named after Cadboro Bay in British Columbia, where a lot of the sightings have been reported. Witnesses usually describe a long neck, a horse-like head, big eyes, and humps sticking out of the water. One of the people who took the footage seriously was, again, researcher Paul LeBlanc, who spent years studying Cadborosaurus and even wrote a book about it. After watching the video, he said he was pretty impressed that the creature reminded him of a plesiosaur. The Cadborosaurus story gets even stranger when you look back at an incident from 1937. Workers at a whaling station in British Columbia reportedly found a strange carcass inside the stomach of a whale. A museum in Victoria said it was probably a fetal baleen whale, but years later, a former worker named James Wakeland claimed he'd seen the remains himself and insisted they looked nothing like an unborn whale. But back to the 2009 footage. Skeptics have said it could just be a frilled shark or a giant eel. LeBlanc disagreed though. He pointed out that the animal seems to move up and down through the water rather than side to side. Fish typically swim by flexing their bodies left and right. On April 25th, a deep-sea camera attached to an oil rig off the coast of Great Britain picked up something really bizarre looking. This weird blob drifts into view. Didn't really look like anything specific. There's no clear head, no tail, eyes, or tentacles sticking out in any obvious way. It's just this soft, gelatinous thing slowly drifting through the water. At one point, it floats toward the camera, then kind of backs off, then comes in again. One early idea was that it might be something like a whale placenta floating down from above. That got dismissed pretty quickly though. This was very deep down, and anything like that would have been broken down or eaten long before it showed up on camera. When the footage hit the internet, you had all the usual sea monster reactions, and scientists started taking a proper look at it. Craig McLean, a deep sea biologist at Duke University, went through the footage and pointed out that you could actually make out reproductive organs inside the body. And that detail helped narrow things down a lot. After comparing it with known species, he linked it to a deep sea jellyfish called Stiuso enigmatica. Other researchers refined it a bit further, said it was more likely Stiuso reticulum, a close relative. It's a jellyfish with a weird translucent body that can look like it's glowing when light hits it. Before this, it had only been recorded a handful of times, so even though it's identified, it's still a very mysterious creature. This footage comes from August 2010 in Japan's Sagami Bay. An ROV was scanning the ocean floor when it recorded something very strange. Take a look. You notice this shape in the shadows, and as the camera gets closer and closer, you make out what looks like a pair of eyes on the smooth, round head. When the clip was shared online, it was picked up and reshared all over the place, with people comparing it to the infamous creature known as the Ningen. The Ningen is said to be a mysterious aquatic humanoid creature, sits firmly in the cryptid category. And this next piece of footage is also said to have captured the creature. Couldn't find where the original footage came from, but this clip was posted to Reddit 10 years ago by a now deleted user who wrote, "This video purportedly shows the Ningen, a cryptid resembling a giant aquatic humanoid." Now, it's hard to make out what we're looking at here. Am I saying I believe this is genuine footage of some undiscovered sea monster? No, but I do think the cloudiness of the video kind of adds to the creep factor. It has a certain Lovecraftian quality about it. This dark, shadowy thing floating through the murky water. Now, obviously, this is a video of a whale, but this footage is far more incredible than you think. This is a very rare species to see. It's called Omura's whale, or the dwarf fin whale. It wasn't even confirmed as its own species until 2003, and even then, everything scientists knew about it came from dead specimens. For over a decade after that, nobody had ever seen one alive. That changed in October 2015, when an international team of biologists working off the coast of Madagascar encountered them in the wild for the first time. They documented 44 of them. It was the first time the species had ever been observed and recorded alive. By whale standards, they're relatively small, somewhere between 32 and 39 feet long, which is part of why they've been mistaken for Bird's whales for such a long time. Up close though, they're pretty distinct. The lower jaw is asymmetrical, so you got white on the right side and dark on the left. Their fins are also unique enough that if you're in a position to compare, you can tell them apart. Since this 2015 recording, they have been spotted a handful of times, but sightings are still super rare, and of course there's still a lot about them that we don't know. A Reddit user posted this freaky footage saying this creature had only been captured 2 times on video. The general consensus in the comments was, "What the hell is that thing?" and "keep it away from me." It is almost impossible to make sense of. You just have no idea what you're looking at unless you know what you're looking at. It's a deep sea siphonophore. These things are incredibly strange though. What we're looking at here is not actually a single creature, it's an entire colony of tiny animals fused together, functioning as one living organism. Some parts are responsible for swimming, some catch food, some handle reproduction. None of them can survive on their own. It's kind of like an ant colony where every member has a different job, except in this case, they're physically connected. There's also this footage captured during a 2020 expedition off Western Australia. Researchers spotted this massively long siphonophore hundreds of meters below the surface. It couldn't even fit the entire thing in the camera frame. Based on measurements taken from the footage, scientists estimated the colony could have stretched up to 119 meters, or roughly 390 feet long. That's longer than a blue whale, and potentially longer than any other animal ever recorded. That has been the video. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next one.